So the actual operational remote viewing started in 1976 under the Army, and then it was transferred in 1985 to the Defense Intelligence Agency, and then I joined it in 1986. It was just called coordinate remote viewing, and I did extended remote viewing. Those were the two methodologies that we did in the unit. And they would train us in training targets, and then after the training targets, they would take us into operation simulation problems, meaning they were not real military operations, but they were like military operations, like maybe it would access and describe a fighter aircraft. Okay, and then after all of that, we would go in and we would do military operations. At the time that I went in, the Cold War was still in. The Soviet Union didn't fall. The Soviets were doing, or we had information that the Soviets were doing this. So a lot of our targets were Soviet sites, like what is going on in this building, what are they up to? And so that's what we did. When you go into the unit, they train you, and how they train you is through training targets that were developed by Stanford Research Institute. So they put a picture in an envelope, and you were to access and describe that picture. Then after you do enough training, and the methodologies were called extended remote viewing or coordinate remote viewing. I did the extended remote viewing, so I had to go in and do their method, which was called extended remote viewing. And that was more or less just kind of visualizing, going down into a meditative state and visualizing and coming out and writing a report and drawing pictures of impressions that I received while I was sort of in a meditative state. I did extended remote viewing where I would lay on this, where I would, somehow you put yourself into a self-hypnotic state. And as you meditate, you receive impressions of the target. So then you come out and you draw pictures, you draw pictures and you write a report. And the monitor, the monitor, like Ed would be the monitor, he would not know what the picture, he would not know what the picture is. So everybody's in a blind situation to make it very clean. I guess it's like a painter. They just sit down and they draw a picture. It's like a musician. They just sit down and they play the piano. I don't prepare. It's sort of like let the information come to my mind. You have to focus, I guess, on the question. You have to focus a little bit, and then after a while, the information just comes to you. So the information's out there. It sort of hits the brain. It's a mental thing. So the information, you sort of have to focus, maybe think on it, and it will come. The subconscious will pick it up, and then when you do the report or the writing or that's the manifestation of the information. I ask myself, what does I'm going to see a picture, what is it? Or tell me what's in this picture that I'm going to see in an hour. I ask myself. And then that gives me you need the focus, and then you receive impressions. You receive impressions. Everybody's receiving information. However, whatever methodology people are using to access information or to gain information, it doesn't matter because we're all coming out with information. And then you just give the person, either the monitor or the operations officer, you give the information. No matter what methodology a person uses, they have to come out, they draw pictures, they get sketches, and they write a report. So it doesn't matter what methodology you use. Now, what I found was when they called fixed sites, like if you're looking at a structure, the extended remote viewing works very well. But I found for personalities and for locations, my automatic writing or the written remote viewing worked much better. It's sort of like depending on the task, I choose what methodology I'll use. When you remote view, it's very conceptual. When you receive information psychically, the information is very conceptual. It's not black and white. You may get a picture of a car. It's conceptually in remote viewing, that would be vehicle. I would not report car. I would say there's a vehicle involved. There's a way, the subconscious may be picking it up as a car, but not necessarily would it be a car. It could mean vehicle. So there's ways that you have to teach people how to report back what they see. You have to be open and relaxed, and then the information sort of comes into your mind. And it comes, you know, it just comes in different ways. Sometimes the information, it just comes in different ways. It could be a feeling. Sometimes it could be a feeling. Sometimes it could be where you actually see something. You could, you know, you may smell something. So you sort of get into this altered state or semi-altered state, because it's really not that, it's not that altered, because you still are aware of your surroundings. So I would say it's a semi-altered state, and you receive these impressions. You're receiving this information. So then when I come out of that, I have to write down. I write down my information and I present it to whoever's asking. It's not a dream. A dream is totally different. No, it's impressions that come into your mind. You could get an impression of a mountain. You could get an impression of water. Maybe you may not see water. Maybe you feel motion like water. You know, a lot of times with mountains consist of water. So, you know, I may sense water at the site, but I don't see the water. But if you say water, a mountain, a snow-capped mountain consists of water, because the snow is water. If you're given too much information about a target or an operation, I can't go over there and work to get the information because I have too much information. So I am thinking logically. I am not performing at the psychic level. I'm thinking. I'm doing too much thinking, and it's too logical. They just felt like you could ask a psychic anything, and it's just better if you don't know. You get a better answer if the psychic doesn't know anything. Well, another thing too is that there was a lot of research that was put in to develop a target picture. And I think that the scientists in ed, if you want the remote viewer to work, you need to stimulate the subconscious. You need to get the best out of the viewer that you can, and certain images, certain pictures can bring that out. I had one gentleman, he was a friend of a friend, and he handed me a picture, a sealed envelope, and he said, I want you to tell me about this individual in this envelope. So I couldn't get anything, and I met with him, and I said, you know, I'm sorry, I really couldn't get any information. Well, when we opened up the picture, there were 10 people in the envelope. And I said, and what person? And he said, I wanted you to tell me about my grandfather. Well, there should have been only the picture of his grandfather in the envelope, not 10 people. And I think people feel that they can, you know, put anything in an envelope and then you come out and you can do it. I feel like there's a practice in trying to pick a target and how to task too. I guess no one quite knows how this works, and you're right, maybe we don't have scientific proof, but what we have learned, that we know that if you do this, it's going to work better. You know, we know that if you put this picture in an envelope and you kind of take that envelope and you put it away in a space all by itself, you know, somehow the viewer can focus on that on that instead of 10 envelopes. We know that if a remote viewer goes into a semi-dark room, maybe with a dim light, we know certain things make what you're going for. What I think what we want is we want to make the conditions conducive to remote viewing, and I think that's what we have learned. Okay. I think that's what, and that's different than just anybody putting a picture in, and people have done that to me. Oh, what's in here? Well, I couldn't, don't, if you want to know about your grandfather, you put your grandfather in the picture, not 9 other people with your grandfather. That's an educational process. I believe that if people want to learn, I think they can learn. I think that they can learn it if they want it. I also feel that if there's a development, so if you want it bad enough, you will develop yourself. But I also believe there's a genetic component, and I do believe that I do believe that there is a genetic component to it. I strongly believe that. I had a twin sister. My mother was psychic. I had an aunt. I had 2 cousins that have these abilities. I was told and this was all on my mother's side, but on my father's side, I was told my grandfather, before he came here from Italy, gave psychic readings. So there definitely is a genetic component to this. I think as they develop, and as you develop and you get more practice, and as you're going along, other things start opening up to you, things that cannot be explained. And I think people get very, it's fear-based, and so they'll back off. But I do feel if somebody wants it bad enough and they go and learn, and they can learn and keep going and reading and exploring, I think they can do it. But I definitely feel there's a genetic, and you're trained in it, and I'm trained in it. So it's sort of like my subconscious knows what to do. When I train people, it's, when I teach remote viewing, it's amazing that I feel that the mind and that subconscious will work for you. The problem in training people is not them actually getting the information of the picture, it's them reporting back. The problem that people have is reporting back what they saw. So when I teach remote viewing, people will get the sight. It's the mind, it will work. Your mind will work. You can train it. It's coming back and putting the information on paper. You have to teach people how to report back. Because I think because of what we do can go against a lot of people's belief system. If this does not bode well with the person's belief system, they're going to be against it. It makes people very uncomfortable if it goes against their belief system. There was an advisory board that we had at the Pentagon. I mean, when Ed May would brief, or we had to talk about our operations, they would ask, how did you get that information? And we had to be clean. I mean, we had an advisory board, we had an oversight board, we had everything that we needed to operate in a good way. How much are we contributing is a collection asset? How much are we contributing along with other collection assets? Well, a lot of times our information should have been used in conjunction with other collection assets, but a lot of times we weren't. When the other collection assets wouldn't work, then they would come to us as the last minute. So that wasn't fair either. I think in the early years of the program, we had the political support of higher ups. They knew how to keep it together. They knew how it worked. At the end, we were losing all of that.